This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 98 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, everyone. I'm Gordon Brewer, and welcome to the podcast. If this is your first time listening, I'm glad you're here. Glad you found us. I hope you'll come again. And if you're coming back, welcome back. And I hope you'll take time to subscribe to the podcast. So I'm real excited about my guest today, Juan Santos. And Juan is a therapist based out of Greensboro, North Carolina, but is expanding into a neighboring city, Winston-Salem. And I enjoyed getting to talk with Juan at the beginning of our recording, just about some kind of common connections, me being a North Carolina native myself. I might have shared this before, but I grew up in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, in Cary, North Carolina. But anyway, we're going to get to Juan here in a minute and learn a little bit about his practice and just what he's learned about this whole private practice journey and creating a niche and all that kind of good stuff. And he's a really neat guy, so I'm excited for you to get to know Juan. But before we get to Juan, I did want to mention that depending on when you're listening to this, this is coming out. This episode is coming out the last week of September, and I wanted to let you know that there is still time to get the replay of the How to Make Money in Private Practice webinar that I did with Julie Harris from Green Oak Accounting, and also take advantage of the special deal that we're offering around the Money Matters in Private Practice course. So when you go to the website, practiceoftherapy.com, you can look up there at the top, and there's a little banner you can click on, and that'll get you into the right place to listen to the webinar and watch the replay and find out about the special stuff we're offering with this webinar. Also, just to give you a heads up, we've got another webinar we're planning for October, and it's going to be around the topic of business entities. So keep an eye out for that. We're still working out the details about where and when and how and all that sort of thing. But anyway, I just wanted to let you be aware of that. And let's see, what else was it I wanted to let you know about? I remember what it was. This is episode number 98. So after this next episode, we've got a special episode coming up, and that's going to be episode number 100. And I'm working with my virtual assistant, Rachel, to kind of come up with some clips and some highlights from where we have come from with the podcast. It is hard to believe now that I'm 2 years into this that we're already at 100 episodes. You know, it's interesting in this whole podcasting space, just what has transpired. I never knew, and you've heard me say this before, I never knew that the podcast would take off like it has. So be sure to share it with your friends if you're enjoying the podcast, and also shoot me an email. I'd love to get your feedback on the podcast and maybe some topics that you might be interested in. Also, if you feel like you've got something that you feel like you could contribute to our audience, be sure to reach out to me. You can go over to practiceoftherapy.com/podcast, and you'll see a link there to apply to be on the podcast. And I'd love to hear from you, and I'm starting to get more and more people to do that. And so I'm always looking for interesting people to talk to and learning about your stories and finding out about you, the listener. And so this is, I love this platform, and I love being able to do this every week, and hope to continue on with this, as long as I'm able to do it. So got a lot of great plans for this next year. It's hard to believe we're almost at the end of September. This seems like this year is just flying by. But anyway, wanted to let you know about that. Also, real quickly before we get to Juan, I wanted to remind you that about the G Suite for Therapists course. It's available. And while I'm getting ready to do some updates and some updating, Google changes all the time. And so I realized that with the G Suite for Therapists course, I needed to probably add some new stuff and maybe take out some old stuff. But anyway, the course is designed to really kind of show you how to use all the different tools available through Google G Suite to use it in your practice, but also learn how you can use it to make your record keeping and your email and all those kinds of things HIPAA secure and HIPAA compliant. A lot of people aren't aware that you can do that with G Suite. So the course goes in not only into that, but just really gives you some ideas about how you can use it as a tool, as a platform to help you manage your practice and be more productive in your practice. And so while I'm working on the updates, I'm going to, here for a few more weeks, I'm going to be leaving the price as it is. But once I start getting the updates in there and get all that complete, it's going to go up on the price. But the good news is if you purchase now, you can get it at the original price, which is only $98 for that. And there's also a payment plan if you want to do that. But once the updates go in, you can also have access to those at this current price. So take advantage of that. And you can get to that at practiceoftherapy.com/G Suite course. So that's that. And I'm happy to now get to Juan Santos, and I'm glad you're going to get to hear him. So without further ado, here's my friend Juan Santos. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so happy to have with me today Juan Santos. And Juan, great to have you.
Thank you. I am excited.
Yes, and I'm so glad you reached out to me and to talk about your journey in private practice. And Juan is a therapist in the Greensboro, Winston-Salem, North Carolina area. And
yes.
We were just kind of talking about that. I'm a North Carolina native myself, and so grew up in the Raleigh, Cary area. And so we were just kind of thinking about that. So, but Juan, as I start with everyone, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've landed where you've landed and what you're doing now?
Yeah. And I'd like to start with, the same conversation that we had, such a small world where we connected. And I think it's so important for clinicians to be able to reach out. We're building this relationship, and I think it's something that allows a flower to blossom, to become something, bigger, stronger, and beautiful. I started my private practice journey with support, same support as I'm getting right here through this podcast. I came right out of graduate school, and I got so fortunate to have someone that literally put me under their wing, and they were like, this is how you do it. This is how you pull in clients, how you market yourself. I know that you weren't taught a lot of those aspects in graduate school, counseling school, but here's the school of the hard knocks,
yes.
MBA.
Uh-huh.
That was so supportive. My private practice is interconnected through my family, meaning that my wife and I, she does a lot of the logistics, administrative work, and that really has helped so much to get us to the point that we are at today. Right.
And I did a little snooping with you, just looking at what you've got out there with your website and on social media, and you're really, I really love the way that you're just kind of presenting yourself and putting yourself out there. And another thing that we talked about that we kind of have in common is that, believe it or not, I'm kind of wired as an introvert myself. And you were just talking about just kind of how for a lot of therapists, especially those of us that are more introverted, how that whole marketing piece is a little bit intimidating. And how did you break through all of that for yourself?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey because I remember in graduate school, I would sit next to colleagues, and if there's a spectrum for being introvert, and let's say all the way to the left is super introvert, I'm probably like a little more to the right, but not all the way to the extrovert. I
Uh-huh.
grew up in a house with a lot of siblings. It was loud, and that allowed and helped me to come out of my shell, but not to the point of like an extrovert who's just as Susan Cain, which, guys listen to Susan Cain.
Yes.
Those are people that they strive off of that energy that comes from socialization. I'm not to that capacity. Putting myself out there through marketing, I did that by staying genuine, by looking at, okay, Juan, if you're going to be on a podcast, if you're going to be on an Instagram video or a YouTube video, handshaking people in elevators, right? The whole elevator speech. You have to do that like with what's true to you. Like, be as normal, as genuine, as silly. Just be Juan Santos the way that your mom and dad raised you. And
Hmm.
at first, Gordon, I'll be very honest with you, I struggled with that. Going through clinical school, we are taught professionalism, put on that button-up shirt, eye
Yeah.
contact, all of these things that have to do with like the clinical work, which I love. And I did that in a couple of marketing episodes and platforms. They didn't go well.
Right. Uh-huh.
I'd have friends and family, and they're like, "Why are you doing that? Why?"
Uh-huh.
It's like, that's not Juan. That I don't know that person. And I'm like, no, listen, I'm trying to be super professional. I'm trying to talk in a certain voice. Like, I want to teach you how to manage your anxiety. They're, yeah, I'm sure you could do that, but just do
Uh,
it with, be your natural self. And it
right.
took a while to build that kind of comfort.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah, we know you're exactly right. We know this stuff from just our clinical training. The thing that people connect with first is if you're genuine and that you're approachable and that you're warm. And it in the I do a fair amount of supervision. I'm an AAMFT approved supervisor, so I get a lot of people, and that those whole people skills are something that I think to some degree you can learn a little bit of it, but if it doesn't come across as genuine, people pick up on it right away, and so that's
Yeah.
that's huge, and you're exactly right. It's that's really kind of what leads right into marketing. So yeah, I love that. So you did something else that to me just stands out as just a little out of the box, and that's just jumping into private practice right out of grad school. So tell us more about how that happened.
Yeah, there's I did an episode with Joe from Practice of the Practice, and I remember back in the heyday, he would always say that he's very ambitious, and I'm like, I relate to this guy, except for, let's say there's a pool, I would jump in the pool without swimming, and then I would figure out how to swim.
Uh
My
huh.
wife, on the other end, she's going to take all the training classes, process, stink, all of those things, and then she'll jump into the pool. Now, we'll both survive, but you can tell the difference there. That's what I
Right.
did at graduate school.
Uh
I
huh.
got that degree, jumped right in. I knew what I wanted, and I knew what my goal was. I was going to get there through the trenches.
Yes, yes. Well, that's great. I mean, I think that's a big part of it is that you kind of overcome that fear
Hmm.
of just jumping in there. And I think it does, my friend David Hall, who's been on the podcast a few times, he talks about going into private practice takes a good bit of intestinal fortitude in order to get
Yeah.
through those first months. So, what was it like for you? You said you had kind of a mentor and somebody that took you under their wing. So, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I definitely had that. I'm an avid reader, avid listener. I like to connect with people, meet people. If I see you at the coffee shop, I will try to start a conversation with you, a little bit beyond the small talk. So utilizing that part of myself allowed me to learn a lot of different lessons, like how to use, I don't know, Instagram, to connect with a certain population, a certain norm, or how to write articles even though I hadn't written before. Pushing myself in those ways. I think too, coming from I was born in the Dominican Republic, and I like to say the American dream. If you want to see the definition, I can share the life story of my family, how my parents got here. But being able to see the way that my parents struggled, it allowed my worry of, I don't know if I'm going to make it from graduate school to private practice, to have cushion, to have support.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very true. One of the things that I think I've learned over and over again from not only people like you, but even from my clients, the people that are usually most successful in life are people that have had mentors or a guide along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
That there's people, and it's usually, it might be one person, but it could be several people that influence us. And it sounds like your parents really were very ambitious. And so you kind of followed that example.
Yes. Yeah. My dad came here in his 30s and went straight into, he owned an alteration shop, sewing, leather repair, but just went right in there, not knowing any English. And I remember being back at home in Dominican Republic, it would be like a luxury for us to have cereal. So, having these experiences, these moments, it gives us, as one of my person I read a lot about, Renee Brown, it gives us that vulnerability to push ourselves and to know that we are capable, we are able to. Sometimes that means that I may need a little bit of help.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's I just totally agree with you on that. I think about the people in my life that have influenced me and kind of guided me along the way. And if I hadn't have had those, I probably would have been kind of stuck in a rut, probably not had the ambition that I've had to really push myself along the way. So, yeah. So you've got an interesting niche. It seems that it fits your background pretty well. Tell folks a little bit about that and kind of your passion around your niche and what the types of clients that you prefer to work with.
Yes, absolutely. So the niche areas that I focus on, one is in the domain on the left field of working with couples, helping couples address issues in their relationship and keep moving forward through the punches. The other area connects to writing immigration evaluations. And I think that one fits here well. So what that is, I'll kind of paint a picture just in case it's new to clinicians. And if you're out there listening, clinicians, you're able to do this. I would love if you jump on board. It's something that a lot of people need support in. What it is this relationship where, as the clinician, you're going to be working with the client, the patient, who is also working with an attorney. The attorney supports them in navigating their legal case. Overall, they're trying to be able to remain here in the U.S. And obviously, as U.S. citizens, we know why we want to be here in the U.S. It's a beautiful place of opportunity. And the clinician, depending on the type of case they have, will depend on the type of evaluation you're going to write. So one example of that could be, let's say, a hardship case. That's if my wife, her name is Elizabeth, let's say that I am not documented, right? So I am here undocumented, and she's here documented, so she's a citizen. We can go through a hardship case that she would work with the attorney, who's going to do all the legal stuff, and the clinician does that mental health component. The clinician's going to work with her. Again, I'm giving you a superficial top layer image. The clinician's going to work with her on documenting what would it be like for her to be separated from her husband, from her kids, to have to go to maybe a country she's never been to, all of those details. And then that is going to lead to potential diagnosis, potential recommendations, and then that gets turned in to the entire case that the attorney is going to utilize and present in front of immigration court.
Right. Yeah. So what sort of things do you tend to look for when you're doing an evaluation? I mean, obviously you're there to help people navigate, and in today's climate, I would imagine it's even more difficult than it has been in the past, just to navigate the whole immigration process. So what sort of things as a clinician do you look for that kind of helps build the case.
One of the reasons that I think clinicians are able to do this, and again, if you're listening, you're able to do this, is because we all go through similar training. We're familiar with the intake process, the MSE, CCA Foundation. So what you're doing is you're looking for how, let's say my wife and I, Juan and Elizabeth, how my wife as a citizen will be impacted if I were to be deported. So if I were to be sent back. You're looking at money exchange rate. What would that be like if she has to send money to support me there? Do I have a home there? Do I have a support system there? What's her history here? Does she have any current difficulties, such as does she seek therapy here? What's her work situation? Does she speak Spanish? You're looking at all of those domains, and then you're documenting them in a neutral yet clinical way. Neutral meaning that your role there is not that of the attorney to support and winning the case. Your role there is to assess how that person is doing, and then what potential recommendations can be founded based off of what's noted in the evaluation.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like fascinating work. And one of the things I think maybe people are maybe would be curious about is if they were to get into starting to delve into doing this type of work, how do you kind of get your name out there, and how do you get kind of known for being able to do that?
Good question. You've probably been to a football game and they've got those blow horns, right? Where they can yell a huge message. You get one of those and you say, "Hey, Eddie." That's hopefully a good joke.
Yeah.
So,
but if it works, I mean, why not?
If it works, maybe you and I just created a different marketing platform.
Yeah.
So one of the ways to get yourself out there is through support. There's a lot of different professionals out there. There's a lady named Georgia King. There's a lady named Cecilia. I myself, just like they do, we offer training courses where clinicians come in and we're able to support them as far as how to go all the way from what is this niche? How do I market it? How do I work through it? And then how do I sustain a practice around it?
Right. Yeah. So are you able to, are there certain contacts in your community that you found, I think probably obviously you'd want to get with attorneys that specifically work with immigration issues, would obviously be getting known to them.
Yes, primarily immigration attorneys. I do also go to, let's say, centers that highlight support for refugees, churches, clinics that may be owned primarily by, let's say, a Hispanic professional. So that clinic, you go in there and the primary language is Spanish, so they serve mostly Spanish-speaking persons. Then, for me as the clinician, I'm looking at, okay, more than likely, these are going to be places that my ideal client is going to visit. And then to support, if you're okay, I'll be more than happy to kind of go into, different avenues of how to market.
Yeah. So you had talked about, being genuine in terms of like social media outreach, because, social media to me is a kind of a funny thing. I mean, I don't know that people necessarily go to social media looking for a therapist, but we can plant the idea there. Mm-hmm. And also, I'm wondering too, just how you've been able to incorporate that with social media, because I know that's something that you've been able to address as well, just being genuine with social media and doing it in an authentic way.
Yeah, one of the things that I do first is I look at having a platform. So if you're out there, you're looking at, okay, what platform do I want to utilize? I then connect the platform to a population. So for instance, Instagram is going to hit younger folks than Facebook, and then Snapchat is going to hit even younger than Instagram. So that's already something that clinicians want to be thinking about. And then from there, like you, I utilize social media more to support those out there. And then if that leads them to reaching out to me, to reading a certain book from somebody, to attending a certain seminar, fantastic. Mm-hmm. I think I was put here, on this world or earth, if you will, to support people, to navigate them, to allow them to get from point A to point B to move forward. Whether that's here in my office with me or sitting down with you or whoever else, as long as you are moving forward, I'm happy. One of the ways that I do marketing, and if it feels genuine to me, would be, let's say I use this example. You and I are having this conversation here, and I feel so good about it. Like, I feel really good inside right now. After we get off, I may grab my phone, pull it up, get on Instagram, and do a quick video and say, hey, guess who I just got to connect with?
Yeah.
And, even right now, I'm already thinking how nice it was to think about what my parents did for me from the Dominican Republic to the U.S. And then just share that to highlight gratitude, appreciation, and then hoping that somebody will utilize that in their life. And then there's a message that's moving forward.
Right. Yeah. I love that, because I think that's that, again, thinking about the whole marketing piece is when we connect with people on an emotional level, that's really what speaks to them the most. I mean, you might be familiar with the Story Brand podcast with Donald Miller. I was listening to that yesterday, and that was one of the things that they were talking about was, being able to make that emotional connection with people. And if you think about it, as therapists and counselors, social workers, that's what we do, is we connect with people on an emotional level. And so I think marketing, I think we shy away from it because of the connotation of it. But I think ultimately marketing is just about connecting with people in a genuine way and just being able to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It took me so long to learn that. And I think it's because, when we look at marketing, just maybe me, when I looked at marketing and I researched it, I found so many images and books that just related to someone like in a suit and tie, being sleazy, looking for the sale, looking for the win. And that didn't relate. And I said, okay, is this what I have to do? Have a certain voice, a certain image. And I made certain videos, and people were like, no, Juan, be yourself, be your genuine self. So that was my process.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's obviously working well for you with that. Or the other thing too that I think is to your advantage is the fact that you're bilingual. And are you finding that it would make sense? And I don't want to be too stereotypical here, but do you find that you have a lot more Hispanic people that are drawn to you and seeking services from you, or is that just really kind of a myth?
Yeah, no, not stereotypical at all. I am so grateful that my mom and dad pushed it on me and my brothers. And it was something that I've got too many bullying stories to tell you about that had to do with speaking Spanish. But I'm glad that today I am the man that I am and the husband and the dad that I am, and I hold this background. Being able to hold the language when I do my evaluations, yes, it helps tremendously. Yet, clinicians, if you're out there are services that can bring in a translator, so you're still able to work around that. When I work with couples, I am from the Dominican Republic, Hispanic. My wife is Caucasian, born here, and maybe you're familiar with Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Yes.
Fort Bragg, that's where she's from. And we have that cultural difference, language difference. So when I work with couples, I throw that out there. I share it. I go, listen, I grew up in a house where 20 people could talk at one time, and I could still listen. And her mom and dad, quiet.
Yeah.
And that, of course, created challenges in our relationship. So there's a lot of couples that I work with, and I think that's where I found that niche in helping couples, either interracial relationships or these, differences in language and culture. And culture is just a wide spectrum.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It's becoming more and more aware of, we learned that in graduate school. Just, I think every one of us has to go through a social and cultural kind of class as in this field. But I think when we become more and more aware of that, particularly I work with a lot of couples as well. And it's one of the common clinical problems is that the couple is struggling with trying to communicate kind of through the lens of their culture. and
Yes.
there's a lot gets lost in translation, and so I think that's a huge thing. And I would say that would be, our, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here, but one of the things that I think is just a phenomenon that is a good thing is that we are becoming more and more diverse as a society, and so there's a lot more cultural overlap. And I think
Yes.
the more that we can understand that and understand just not only the literal language behind that, but also those nonverbals and all of that,
Yes.
go a long way with helping people.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. That this is a whole avenue I could go down forever. I mean, it's just
Oh
it's
yeah, me
something that
too.
it fascinates me. Yeah, yeah. So, well, Juan, I want to be respectful of your time, and I want tell folks, just to borrow from my friend Joe Sanok, for those of you that are listening, if you had a one core message that you would want most therapists to know just from your own experience, what would that be?
The core message that I'll share here today is to keep moving forward. You're going to have your own journey in private practice. It may mean that you get on the edge of being broke or on the edge of wanting to yank your hair out. Keep moving forward. Once you get to the top of that mountain, you're going to turn back and you're going to smile and you're going to want to share your story. You're going to want to share your challenges. Every great book that we read has challenges. It has pitfalls. It has people falling down on one knee and getting back up. And that's why we read those books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm reminded of a video by oh shoot, I'm going to make a fool of myself because I can't remember his name, but it's about jumping, and it's about do you know what I'm talking about? Who I'm talking about?
Not yet, but hopefully I get there.
Yeah, I'm embarrassed now because I can see his face. He does Family Feud. What is his name?
Steve Harvey?
Yeah, Steve Harvey. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm
Yeah, there
having.
we go.
As I tell people, I'm having an over 50 moment. So, but Steve Harvey has this video where he talks about jumping, and he said that I love the metaphor. He says, as you're flying down, you're going to hit the rocks, you're going to be bruised up, and then you're going to see somebody else that's jumping, that's just soaring by. It seems effortless, but you can believe that they've also hit the rocks before that. And I think that's absolutely true. We have to fail to some degree in order to succeed. And so I think
Yes.
that's a huge, and I'm absolutely on the same page with you. And people hear this from me all the time. Be persistent and consistent with what you do. Just
Yes.
keep at it. And even those days when you feel like, okay, I just want to throw the towel in, I just want to quit. That's exactly when you need to just kind of keep going, keep pushing forward. So,
Yes. Yeah.
so how many years have you been in private practice now?
I got out of graduate school in 2014. It's 2019, so almost 5 years.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at what point, just curious, did you feel like the momentum hit and you kind of got over the hump, would you say?
I would say the momentum hit about, I think I got right into it. I graduated in May 2014, I think, and August around. So maybe like November, Christmas time. That's where the momentum hit. As a funny little tiny story,
Yeah.
I had a side job at that moment. It was near Christmas time, and I got let go. And it was like the day before Christmas Eve. And it was just, you could imagine. And that same day, my wife and I were driving to see family, that our back tire cover fell off. So things were not working out. And at that moment, my wife and I, we just sat down, and it's something I love about our relationship. And then, I think we said, it's okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna put more energy, more time into this. And that really, Gordon, it pushed it. I mean, it felt like Arnold Schwarzenegger was behind us, giving us a huge pump.
Yeah.
And it got us to accomplish so many things and to help so many people.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Yeah. Well, I love Juan. I really appreciate your positive, yeah, just your positivity and just your enthusiasm for what you do. And I'm so glad you've been with me today. I'm glad to get to know you. When I'm driving through Greensboro next time, I'll have to maybe give you a call and we'll grab some coffee or something.
Absolutely. It's on me anytime.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Sounds fun. So tell folks how they can get in touch with you and your website and all of that so they can know
Yeah.
more about you.
I'd love to connect with anyone that has questions about anything you heard today, or if you just want to get coffee virtually or face-to-face.
Uh-huh.
My website is santoscounseling.com. That's santoscounseling.com. And in there, you're going to have all the other avenues connected to it, social media, phone number, etc.
Okay, great. Great. Well, Juan, I'm so glad to make a new friend, and I'm so glad you joined me today. Well, I'm so grateful to Juan for being on the podcast. As you can tell, he's just a stand-up guy. He's the real deal. And what I loved about what Juan had to say was just the whole idea around being genuine and just being who you are. And I think that always resonates with people. I think genuineness people pick up on. I think people, will, if you're not being true to yourself and you're trying to put on a persona in getting the word out about your practice that just isn't who you are, I think people really pick up on that. And so I'm grateful to Juan for being on the podcast, and I'm so glad he reached out to me just took that bold move and a lot of times that's kind of a scary thing for people, of just taking a bold move to reach out and introduce themselves. And I'd love to hear from you. If you're also maybe thinking about wanting to be on the podcast or aspire to do that sometime, shoot me an email or go over to the practiceoftherapy.com/podcast, and you can fill out the application there and tell me why you want to be on the podcast. Like I said at the beginning, I'm always looking for great people to talk to, and I found a good one in Juan. And so thanks, Juan, for being on the podcast and sharing your story and just sharing your knowledge and wisdom of what you've learned so far. The other thing about Juan I'll say is that, as I mentioned, he really did something unusual. He just went straight from graduate school into private practice, and just the importance of finding a mentor to help him with that. And I think that's always important. I think all of us succeed in life because we surround ourselves with the right people, and we find people that can mentor us and coach us and help guide us along the way. And I think that's how people succeed. And I think that's true for us, not only in business, but also in the therapy room. As you've heard from me over and over again, the one thing that I appreciate most about those of you that are listening is that you're doing noble work, particularly in this whole mental health space and being able to help people day in and day out. And that is such important work, and we need to keep it up. And so I think when we can make our businesses work well and we can continue to hone our clinical skills, we can truly help people in their lives. So anyway, I'm so glad that Juan joined me for the podcast. Do check out today's sponsor, Green Oak Accounting. Julie and her team can be a great help to you. And you can find out more about them by going over to greenoakaccounting.com/Gordon, and be sure and let them know that you heard about them here on the podcast. And they'll do a free consultation with you and sit down with you and kind of find out your needs and see how they can best help you. So do check them out. They're great folks, and I'm just loving being able to get to know Julie Harris better with some of the collaboration we're doing around this whole financial side of private practice and teaching that to counselors and therapists and helping people out with that. So yeah, so I think that's about it for today. Again, real quickly, before I stop, I know I keep saying this is it, but there's just a tiny bit more. If you're interested in in the replay of the webinar we did 2 weeks ago, which was called How to Make Money in Private Practice, you can still get access to the replay. Go to the website, practiceoftherapy.com. There's a banner at the top, and you can get access to that and also be able to find out about the special deals around the Money Matters in Private Practice course that were offered in conjunction with the webinar. And that deal's only good till the end of September, so September 2019, depending on when you're listening to this. And also, we've got another webinar coming up in October, and keep your eyes and ears out for that. Take time to subscribe to the podcast. And also, if you haven't subscribed to my email list, you can do that. Again, just go to practiceoftherapy.com. Lots of great free resources there, and that'll also get you on the mailing list. I try not to. One thing I will say about that, I use an automated system through Aweber for my email for the most part. And so when you sign up, you're automatically put into a sequence where I send out some tips and just some things that people find helpful in getting started in private practice and that sort of thing. I also send out just a weekly email just telling you about the podcast episode and just some other things that come up. I know for some people it might seem like a bit much. I'm not offended if you unsubscribe, but I really want the information to be helpful, and communication is the key, and email is one of the best ways to do that. So just wanted to kind of put that disclaimer out there about the email. Some weeks you might get more from me than others, but I try to limit it to some degree, but I want you to be informed as well. So anyway, take time to subscribe if you're interested in that. Looking forward to next week's podcast guest. We've got a special person coming up, and also the episode number 100. We're getting close here, folks, so be sure and tune into that. We're going to be pulling a lot of things together from the 2 years I've been doing the podcast and share all that with you in one episode. So take care, folks. Do take time to subscribe to the podcast, and as always, thanks for listening, and thanks for being part of the journey on the Practice of Therapy podcast. You have been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free Private Practice Startup Guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.